There was an abandoned asylum on the outskirts of town, its looming presence casting a shadow over the surrounding area. It had been closed for years, but the locals still whispered stories about the horrors that took place behind its walls. They spoke of patients being subjected to cruel experiments, of screams echoing through the halls, and of the spirits of the dead lingering long after their bodies had been removed. A group of 5 friends, feeling adventurous and daring, decided to explore the abandoned asylum one night. They gathered in the parking lot, nerves pulsing with excitement as they peered up at the building's foreboding facade. The night was silent except for the sound of the crickets chirping, adding to the eerie atmosphere. The group of friends had brought along some flashlights, and as they entered the asylum, the beams of light illuminated the dusty cobwebbed halls. The air was thick with the stench of decay, and their footsteps echoed loudly through the empty halls. They cautiously explored the different rooms, coming across rusted equipment, broken furniture, and decaying walls. Voice synthesis performed by Yandex Speakit. As they made their way deeper into the asylum, they heard strange noises, whispering voices, and footsteps coming from the floors above. Their nerves began to fray, and the adrenaline rush quickly turned into terror. They tried to find their way back to the entrance, but the corridors seemed to have shifted, and they found themselves trapped. As they continued to explore, they suddenly came across a room that looked completely untouched, as if it had been frozen in time. It was a small room with nothing but a single bed and a window overlooking the moonlit forest outside. But as they approached the bed, they saw that it was occupied. A young girl, no more than 10 years old, lay in the bed, her eyes closed as if she was sleeping. Her skin was pale, and she looked almost transparent, as if she was a ghost. One of the friends, trying to be brave, reached out to touch her, but as soon as their hand made contact, the girl's eyes flew open and she screamed. The group of friends turned to run, but they found that the door had slammed shut behind them, trapping them inside. They were trapped in the room with the haunted girl, and there was no way out. They tried to calm the girl down, but she continued to scream and thrash about, her eyes glowing red in the dim light. Suddenly the room grew colder, and a thick fog filled the space, obscuring their vision. Out of the fog emerged a figure, a haggard old woman with piercing eyes and a sinister smile. She cackled, her voice echoing through the room, as she explained that she was the one who had trapped them all inside. She had been the head nurse at the asylum, and she had never left. Her spirit still haunted the halls, seeking out victims to torment. The friends tried to fight their way out, but the old nurse was too strong, and her powers were too great. They were trapped in the room, unable to escape the haunted asylum, and forced to endure the horrors of the ghostly apparitions that lurked within its walls. Years went by, and no one ever found the bodies of the 5 friends. Some say they are still trapped in the room, screaming and pleading for release. Others say that they became part of the haunted asylum's ghostly inhabitants, destined to torment those who dare to enter its halls. The abandoned asylum still stands, its dark secrets and haunting memories never to be forgotten. And those who know its story warn others to stay far away, lest they too fall victim to. As they walked through the woods, they couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them. Every sound made them jump, and every shadow seemed to move. They had no idea what they were walking into. Eventually, they came across a cabin. It was old and rundown, with boarded-up windows and a sagging roof. It looked like it hadn't been lived in for years. But they were tired and hungry, and the sun was starting to set. They decided to take their chances and spend the night. As they settled in, they noticed strange things happening. The floorboards creaked and groaned as if something heavy was walking across them. The windows rattled, even though there was no wind. And they both heard whispers as if someone was speaking to them in hushed tones. As the night wore on, things only got worse. They heard footsteps coming up the stairs, but when they looked, no one was there. They saw shadows moving across the walls, but there was no one casting them. And they heard laughter, but it wasn't the laughter of a human. By morning, they were both pale and exhausted. They couldn't explain what had happened, but they knew they had to leave. As they gathered their things and stepped outside, they noticed something they hadn't seen the night before: a graveyard, just a few yards away from the cabin. They didn't run, but they walked quickly back to their car, their hearts racing the whole way. As they drove away, they looked back at the cabin, and for a moment, they thought they saw a figure standing in the doorway watching them leave. They never went back to the cabin in the woods, and they never spoke about what had happened to them that night. But they both knew deep down that they had encountered something truly terrifying, something that they could never fully understand or explain.